Thinking Basketball Podcast. My name is Ben. Welcome back to what is just one of the craziest playoffs that I can ever remember. It's been absolutely amazing. Although we were just talking before recording here about what do we start today's show with? Because there was a bunch of weird insanity with the draft lottery last night that we don't really. I mean, we're into the playoffs. I don't know about you, Cody. I'm not into the draft lottery right now. And then in the playoffs, I think we have to start with the Celtics-Knicks, but also as of recording this, we're just getting the official word on Jason Tatum's Achilles injury. And anytime that happens, I just hate injuries. I went through a lot of them when I played sports still, when I could still move my body in high school. And more than just anything, they're just psychologically so devastating. So major injuries like that, where you know you're going to have a star player basically out of the league for at least a year, never fun. And yet we're in the middle of this crazy fun series, in the middle of what was a crazy game 4. The Celtics, as we said over the weekend, we recorded with Mike in another emergency episode because these playoffs are just so crazy. The Celtics had, I thought, a much better process in game 3. They came out in game 4, continued to play with a lot of aggression. Process was still pretty good. Tatum's making shots everywhere. He's making defensive plays everywhere. And Doris Burke, at the start of the third quarter, said something like, man, the Knicks just have to manage to get this under 10. By the fourth quarter, mimic what they did in Boston and keep it a possession game, and they could strike. And they're playing really well. The Celtics are flying all over on defense. They're peel switching. The Knicks can't get to the basket, but Mikal Bridges is throwing shots. And all of a sudden, Jalen Brunson starts an early Brunson burner in the third quarter. And you just get this like really well-played game where the Garden is electric. New York City right now is so in love with this Knicks team that my cousin, who lives in New York and does not watch basketball at all, I don't even think he knows a basketball is a round object. He may not be able to pick it out of a sports ball lineup if we were to construct a sports ball lineup. He calls me the other day. He's like, man, this city's really electric with Knick fever. The people talking about it everywhere in the streets. And they go on to win this game down the stretch to go ahead 3-1 in this series. Cody, I mean, I'll stop talking now, but this is just one of the many great series going on. How are you feeling?
I mean, yeah, it's terrible that we have the Tatum injury. Obviously, we've seen 2 Achilles injuries now, and it's really tough when you look at the stage of a player's career, right? And you think about it psychologically. Damian Lillard, of course, being a smaller player, explosive, a long way back, being 34 years old, coming back from it. And Jason Tatum being 27 at the absolute peak of a team that's trying to repeat. And we see some major juggernauts there. I think even if we gift the other series to the Pacers, like a full strength Celtics Pacers series was gearing up to be a really fun Eastern Conference Finals.
Wait a second. These series are not over.
Let me stop.
Wait a second.
Before all of New York comes after me.
Whoa.
If the Celtics had been full strength and ended up winning, that was gearing up to be something exciting. We'll get to the Knicks in a second because they're a very exciting team.
What about the Cavs? You just wrote the Cavs obituary, and I will not have that on my watch.
Do you not think that the Cavs have written their own obituary at the moment, Ben?
Well, I'm the guy who liked the Pacers all year, Cody, and just got hate mail all season, and I'm just stuck with the Pacers the entire way. And as you know, once I found out Darius Garland was injured at the beginning of the series, I was like, Pacers, let's go. Let's go. It's Pacer time. And I think as an aside, we'll hopefully be able to get some more Pacer coverage and content if they advance just from the perspective of basketball and the philosophy of basketball. We've certainly done some content already for them on this season, but just looking at the larger picture with them, Cody, they play such like a purist brand of basketball. Like if you like old school basketball, if you like new school basketball, it doesn't matter. As long as isolation basketball and standing around for 87 seconds looking for a post up isn't your thing, the Pacers, they pressure full court. They fly around the ball. They play with a ton of force and intensity. Everyone knows their role. They're like the ultimate. It's like a kind of like a Popovich Spurs thing. Like everyone has the identity and they buy into their role. And then that pace they play with, the way the ball pops around the court, the way they get into multiple actions. We'll probably have some content, some additional content, like I said, coming up on them in the near future. But that's the word that jumps out to me. Is just they play such like a pure fun type of basketball.
I love this. Let's go to Pacers Cavs. Let's actually start there and we can wind back to Knicks Celtics, because I do want to talk about some of that game and some of that series. Something that I've been really interested in terms of the Pacers and how they have their team building, how it works within their system. It's Pascal Siakam, Ben. We're watching a lot of Pascal Siakam because I think when the trade happens and he goes into Indiana, like there's a lot of talk about, okay, yeah, he's going to fit in with Halliburton. Halliburton likes to kick the ball up. He likes to run a little bit more, but Siakam also really likes his post-ups. He likes his isolation. He falls in love with the mid-range, and he's very good at it, right? You want to jump in here.
How did you feel about that trade when it happened? I think we discussed it briefly, and my impression is I liked Indiana getting another like really good player to the roster, but I know last year it didn't move me. Last year it wasn't like, okay, great. The Pacers got Siakam, but that's not going to do enough to really make them potent or move them into sort of something proximate to an inner circle team. But man, you keep improving on the margins, and now you look at the roster and you're just like, I agree with you. You're just like, oh, Pascal Siakam, not many teams have this. This is awesome.
And I think that's what made me like at the moment. I'm like, cool. I like it when good players end up on good teams.
I think that's what you said. Yep.
Yeah. But the actual fit, I was like, they're kind of both taking away a little bit from what the other one wants to do. Like they're not actualizing each other. But, you know, you watch this most recent game, right? Was that game 4 that they just recently played? Was that game 5? That was game 5 they just recently played, right?
No, they played game 4.
Didn't they play 5 games?
They're up 3-1. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I have it written down in my notes as game 5. So I'm going to change that right now to game 4. So when you actually see them when you see them playing game 4, the Cavaliers come out with that zone that the Pacers struggled with so much, right? And one thing that was happening, and this was happening especially when Jarrett Allen was on the bench, is that Siakam's just kind of hanging around the paint. He's just kind of floating around there. And as soon as he gets an entry pass, you got poor old like Max Strus down there, a big enough body, but like Siakam is a dude that if you are not legitimately like bigger and stronger than him, he is going to abuse you in the post. And he had, I think it was maybe like 3 straight baskets on some kind of options attacking the zone in that sort of way. And I kept thinking about this and I'm like, this is really weird. Because when you're trying to build a team, you're kind of thinking like, who fits into my philosophy, who amplifies what it is that we're trying to do. But Siakam, when it comes to something like the playoffs, he gives you such a weird and different pitch when you just got to try some weird stuff and break down what the other team's doing, that it's almost additive to what they're doing. Like he breaks out of the sort of ball movement sort of excitement that the Pacers do, and him being able to do that kinds of actions, not mentioning the defensive stuff he can do. I think it's been an incredible boon for the Pacers. So I think these playoffs, it's kind of showing that's like, hey, maybe you need a guy or two that kind of goes against the team's philosophy, but they do it in a few different flexible ways that allows you to attack in a few different options that the other team isn't expecting.
I think it is additive. I think it's entirely additive. The word I think of when I think of Pascal Siakam is playoff player. And we talked about this last year, even the concept of like a finals player, or just as the competition gets harder and harder, you get to the conference finals and the finals, the bench and the rotation shorten up, how many guys can play out there. Well, he's able to play out there at a very high level because of his mid-range, because of his isolation scoring, because he has some resilient shot-making ability, because he can now be kind of like a post mismatch. I love the way, as an aside, Cody, and I think he had this even back in Toronto when he was a slightly different offensive player, I love the way he gets into some of his post options with speed, because the Pacers play with such great pace. And it's like when the mismatch is there, this is a different thing than looking for, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Giannis, some like power player who has a mismatch. And you're like, oh, Eric, clear out and make sure we can get the front and you go over there and get the entry pass. Siakam's access to his sweet spots is so fast. So the Pacers will run action and he'll flash to the elbow and get it at the free throw line. And then if there's space and there's no one around, all of a sudden you're getting Spicy P spinned on. He's going one dribble right into his spin move and he's at the basket with a layup. And that's where having the smaller defender becomes an issue. So he's strong, he's skilled, he's diverse. His shooting is just good enough from the outside, I think, to maintain the kind of 5-out spacing and not really ignore him. Obviously, a little bit of playmaking. He's a good defender. Just a really, really strong, high-level playoff performer. And I think it's helped all year once Andrew Nembhard and the Pacers got going. We talked about it many, many months ago. Once this team sort of actualized and Rick Carlisle's coaching kicked in and Miles Turner's playing great, like it's helped them play at an upper echelon because Halliburton's such a great offensive player, because Siakam is such another good player. Then you start to go, oh, all of it. Now I got Andrew Nembhard as a role player. Oh, wow, this is really powerful. Now I have Miles Turner in this like actualized 3-and-D concept as a role player. Obi Toppin and the bench, they can all fit in when you have high-level guys like that.
And the shooting is super weird with Siakam because you go back over the last 4 playoffs he's been in. I don't think he shoots over 30% from 3 in any of those playoffs, right? So it's not clear that the like 44% he's shooting from 3 during the playoffs, he's taking like 5 per 100. So it's not huge volume, but like 44%, that's a guy that you got to be covering. But of course, I think the mid-range shot, the long mids and like the mid 20%. So he's not like knocking it down, but he's very comfortable attacking in all those spaces. He's very comfortable taking those shots. And he's very willing to do it. But on top of all that, Ben, I'm not going to say he's like a top tier passer, but he's a good and willing passer, right? Yep. And part of that zone, he gets it, he sprays it out to Andrew Nembhard, who's relocating for a 3. There was one, I think, like the most impressive pass he makes is he gets it in the corner and Toppin, there's just like a little bit of a space. I think Toppin's being fronted down there, and Siakam just feathers it right down there for Toppin to make the layup. And I'm like, yeah, Siakam, he's just kind of jackknifing it, just like fitting in as the skeleton key and doing all these weird things so that everyone else can kind of be unlocked in what they're doing. And I don't know if there's enough Siakam discourse. He's just been incredible. And I think throughout his career, he's been a great playoff player, like you've been saying. And it's just cool how, like I said, he doesn't necessarily fit into what you would expect for a Pacers player, and it's exactly what they needed in this kind of a series.
I want to talk about the themes of the playoffs and the things that have jumped out to us over these last, however long it's been, about a month. It's been an incredible stretch of playoff basketball. And one of the places that I want to start is what you just said. You throw an entry pass to Obi Toppin, and he's got Darius Garland on his backside. He's got Sam Merrill on his backside. He's got Max Strus, as you mentioned, seems like a guy who maybe could hold up, but 6'4", 6'5", not necessarily going to cut it when you're up against 6'8", 6'9", big, strong, athletic vertical. And so, okay, has the increased sort of physicality that we've seen in these playoffs helped these sort of to go back to like the Toronto thing, like the Raptors Project 6'9", like has it helped big wings? We did our whole thing last summer on two-way wings and how valuable they are in this generation. Has it helped the stronger play? Even like thinking about someone like Lou Dort in Oklahoma City and how he's short, but he's built like a fullback. So you can survive a little bit longer when you switch onto a powerful player like Nikola Jokic and you try to keep him from getting deep in the paint because, you know, Jalen Brunson is, let's think about defense. And there's probably, let's say, 4 main physical components of playing defense in basketball. Not mental, not X's and O's, physical, right? How fast are you? If you're slow, you can get cooked and beat off the perimeter. How vertical are you? How wide are you with your length? And then how strong are you? How well can you hold your position? And so if you're a defender like Jalen Brunson, you're really small. You're not that horizontal. You're not super quick, but like this is actually key. If bigger players switch onto you, you don't have a quickness deficit that you have to overcome. So the last line of defense is your strength. And we've seen the increased physicality from the officiating, allowing defenders to bang a little bit, to have a body, to make contact with the hips and the chest, to fight for post position. And Cody, I have to whisper this part. If you're smaller, they let you get away with more. And this has been going on for 40 years. John Stockton used to set the nastiest screens on earth, even though he was like 6'1" or whatever it is. So does that tie in with the physicality where you go back to a series like the Pacers and the Cavs, just the Pacers having all these bodies that can create these problems and physical advantages over the Cavs having to put out there basically just a ton of smaller guards?
You're absolutely right about bigger, stronger, athletic guys really showing out in these playoffs. Like you go down the line, you go to the Timberwolves, like McDaniels, Julius Randle, Anthony Edwards himself. You go, like we were talking about the Pacers, Aaron Nesmith, Pascal Siakam. Go to the Nuggets, Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon. Like these guys are really thriving in an environment when it's like, hey, we're huge, we're strong. And here's the important part about force, Ben. I am willing to throw my weight around, right? I'm willing to get in there and take a hit, not physically like hit someone, although that seems to have happened a couple of times in this Pacers Caps series. DeAndre Hunter and Ben Mathurin seem to get into it a little bit, but I'm willing to get my shoulder in there and cause some chaos both defensively and offensively. And I think something that's really interesting from what we're seeing in the playoffs is you might think like, oh, maybe the most important part of being a good man defender is your quickness, your lateral quickness. Like I think most people think that's probably the most important thing. So it's like, all right, we're going to throw out a spindly little point guard. He's going to have the quickest feet ever, and no one can get by him. But look through these playoffs, Ben. Like how many of these teams have a just quick jitterbug type of guard that's only attacking off the dribble? Because you look across them, Ben, there's not a ton of that. There's not a ton of offensive initiation coming from guys like that. So at this point, I think you almost eliminate that from being the most important, and you just need guys that are going to be stronger because, you know, they're allowing a little bit more hand checking. They're allowing the arm bar a little bit more. So yeah, it's important to have quick feet, but I would argue right now you can be a little bit slower if you can back it up with kind of like the Drew Holiday kind of strength, right? The kind of Christian Brown kind of strength, right? And so I think that's one aspect of defense that I'm noticing a lot throughout these playoffs.
I thought you were going to ask if there are any teams that have really quick guards that can always stay in front of the ball. And I was going to be like, there's one team that has all those guards. They're in Oklahoma. Where were we? Physicality, right? I mean, I personally have always liked a little bit of force and sort of allowing, because basketball is a contact sport, and there's going to be a gray area between the offense being able to claim space and the defense being able to claim space. And sometimes that gray area is basically just what we think of as good old physical, forceful basketball. So I think the physicality has absolutely been a big thing. Another thing, while we stick on defense and the Pacers, is these pickup points. Cody, we've seen the pickup points expand around the league as a league-wide trend in the regular season, but it's continued in the playoffs where if you're Indiana, you're like, I would like to pick you up in the backcourt and I would like to defend you 94 feet for the entire possession. And I might send multiple people at you and you might have to set a screen 75 feet away to do this. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to take away your ability to just flow into offense, and we're trying to bleed clock, and we're trying to make your guys work harder. Like Jalen Brunson at this point, he's playing every game with 3 sprained ankles. I know humans only have 2 ankles, but I'm pretty sure he had 3 different ankle sprains alone in game 4. Now you got me thinking game 5. We're only through game 4. And so Andrew Nembhard, he's going to pick you up in the backcourt, make someone else bring it up. This is an entire sort of extension of this. And I think those two things together, physicality, high pickup points, all this stuff, combined with another big theme for me, Cody, which is shortening the rotation. Teams in the old days used to get down to like 7 players or 8 by the time you got to like the conference finals or the finals, or maybe some huge like game 6, game 7 in the second round. I feel like since about the second game of the playoffs, half the coaches in the association have been like, I trust 6 players. That's it. I trust 6 players. That's what we're doing. We will be playing. Like in this series alone, I think Jamal Murray, as of recording this with the Nuggets and Thunder, I think he's at like 41 minutes per game and change. I think Tatum, even with his injuries, 41 minutes per game. He missed the last couple minutes of game 4. I think Jokic is 40 minutes per game. I mean, we do have a site that could look this all up, but the theme is clear to me that like benches are short, guys are already playing very, very high minutes. And when you do that, you kind of have to slow the basketball down a little because you can't play those minutes and play 105 possessions a game.
What do you think is the prevailing philosophy around shortening the benches so much right now? Because the first thing I think of is I'm like, offense seems to be very hard to come by for some teams, right? Like I'm thinking about the Nuggets scoring. They score 8 points in the first quarter. recently.
Yeah, but I don't think that's a Nuggets thing. I think that's the opponent.
But this is my point, though. This is my point, though, is you can't risk not playing your best offensive players, right? So do you think that's the reason, is like we need to play our best offensive players because offense is so hard to come by? Or is it a defensive side of the thing where we're going to shorten it up for only the guys that can hang defensively out there?
I actually think it's both. I think teams are hyper aware that if you have a weakness on defense, it's going to be attacked. I mean, another huge theme that we've talked about is teams are not running plays. Some teams are running their offenses a little bit here and there, but a lot of teams are mismatch hunting through the roof. They're trying to find that weakness. So defensively, as a coach, you don't want to have players that have glaring defensive weaknesses on the floor, because all of a sudden it gives the offense something easy to go after. On the other side, offensively, if you play 4-on-5, or if you have a guy that you can ignore, it can really muck up your spacing. And man, I think a big X's and O's theme that we've seen in these playoffs connected to this, Cody, is the defenses shrinking the court and clogging up the paint and saying, hey, this has been like a theme of a lot of the content we've actually done on defenses defending superstars. We've seen it in the past, but it's off the charts this year. Everyone's like, no, we're just going to have 5 guys in the lane. You're not going to drive. We're just going to shrink and clog and get in your driving gaps and all this stuff. We're going to make you make harder passes, longer passes over our head. And then we're going to ask our guys to recover. This goes to the demands of, what's being put on players physically. But I see it everywhere. I see it in a ton of series where in the regular season, you can't really do this for 2 big reasons. One, you wouldn't want to ask it of your players physically 82 times a year to be like, okay, I need you to get in the paint and then sprint all the way out to the corner, and then someone else rotates behind you, and you wouldn't want to have that much wear and tear on your body. But the other thing is, you go from night to night in the NBA, and you can't create a game plan that's specific to a player and an opponent like this. When you get in a series and you get that long scout, that's when each one is slightly different, right? So that allows you to say, Anthony Edwards, here's how we're going to play your driving lanes. Here's how we want to play behind the play and the other role players. We also know if Gobert's on the court, we're going to do this. We're going to ignore this shooter. Okay, it's a little different than what we want to do with Jokic. Jokic, we want a guy near the baseline. We want a guy on your top hand. And if Russell Westbrook's in the game, we're going to ignore Russell Westbrook. And on and on and on around the league. You can customize the way you want to do this, but the theme is show a crowd, show a bunch of bodies, create walls, and then recover hard to the outside and dare these guys to shoot under duress. And by the way, Cody, it turns out if you play a basketball game with only 36 hours of rest at the highest level, at the utmost intensity, 3-point percentage goes to about 6%.
I'm gonna bring this back to defense for just a second, but I noticed this in terms of gapping because there were a couple of possessions in that Knicks Celtics game where they were doing that sort of thing. Like Jalen Brunson is starting his drive, and there's the guys defending him, but there's also a guy that like shifts over, so there's basically like standing next to each other. Like there is no more gapping; they've just like merged into each other. So there's one player that is just a single.
It's a true
entity.
wall, right?
Yeah, a true wall against it. But what Jalen Brunson has done so incredibly well, and he's able to do this because I made the Iverson connection last time, but honestly, like we're there at this point, Ben. It's basically like if Iverson just like put on some weight and squatted a little bit more. Like that's what Jalen Brunson's looking like out there, and what he can do is he keeps that dribble going. Like he almost dares the gapping. He just keeps dribbling closer and closer and closer, and the gap gets getting closer to the rim, and he's like, okay, I guess at this point there's no way you can actually recover out to the rip perimeter here, spray it out. Guys like OG and McHale are hitting their shots. Boom, nails the 3. So that's one thing I've noticed that Brunson does specifically to counter that kind of gapping. But I want to talk about OKC for a second, because when I think about, like you said, multiple guys touching the paint, I go back to 2004. We talk about it every time. 2004 finals, Pistons playing the Lakers. There's a couple of plays, like I can picture it right now, a couple defensive possessions where Shaq catches in the paint, and if you pause it at the right time, all 5 Pistons have a foot in the paint. All 5 of them have a foot in the paint, right? And so obviously it was a little bit easier to do that then when you didn't have the ridiculous shooting that you have nowadays. And that always stands in my mind as being like one of the best defensive performances I've ever seen. And I know you've kind of pushed this around, Ben. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to prompt you right now.
Are you going to do this on live radio? What are you doing right now?
Can you think of any games, like off the top of your head, that were better defensive performances than what OKC did to the Nuggets, Ben?
When Cody says, you've pushed this around, I know he's referencing a theory that I'm cooking in private, and he's going to bring it up to the surface. We're talking about game 4 specifically, right?
I don't know what game. I was going to say game 8.
Yeah, you're going to say game 6. Yeah. Game 4, Denver, Oklahoma City. I mean, I think that's a really interesting subtext of that series. Oklahoma City may be pound for pound the best defensive team to ever play basketball. And so they can have a game like that where they're making their highlight reel in that game 4 alone. You could put it up against the entire league's highlight reel. You could be like, what are the best, smartest, most amazing defensive possessions from a team? And you could take Oklahoma City in game 4, and then you could make that just as good, if not better, than like give all 29 other teams for the entire season and pick their best defensive plays. And so what I mean is like Denver ends up with so few points. I think the fatigue to start the game was part of that with the shooting, but it's not that Denver's like playing poorly. Denver, I actually think, is kind of playing really, really well. I think in some cases, Denver's like some of the guys on Denver are playing out of their mind. They're also just stuck because they only have 6 or 6.5 players that they trust, and both off the bench, Peyton Watson, but especially Russell Westbrook, are going to be subjects of loneliness from the defense. They're going to get the full ignore treatment. So yeah, we were trying to think of some games that were as defensively impressive as that game. And it's not an easy thing to do because basketball culture doesn't cash like, hey, I really broke down the film. And it wasn't that LeBron was terrible. It was that the Mavs defense was really incredible in this NBA Finals game. We do the opposite. We just kind of like move past those great defensive performances. But our immediate thought was like 2004 Pistons, 98 Bulls had some incredible games in there. Just in terms of recent vintage, 2008 Celtics, it's probably from one of those great teams. But in the last few seasons, even the 2022 Warriors defense, that was a great defense on the way to that run, there wasn't a game like what I saw in game 4 in Oklahoma City. And I think to jump back into the ideas of like themes that are emerging, the speed that the Thunder play with, the speed that the Pacers play with, the speed that the Cavs offense has played with all year and is still doing right by them at times when they can get into it. But there's just been too many other things that have been problematic with Cleveland in this series to have them be in a 2-2 situation or a more advantageous situation. But I think that youthfulness, that speed, that horizontal component of the game is probably more important now than I think it's ever been. And it ties directly to this whole idea of like shrinking the floor as well, right? If you're the Lakers against Minnesota and you want to shrink the floor because you don't have shot blocking behind, you're very vulnerable when you're not fast because you're vulnerable containing the ball, but more importantly, you're vulnerable rotating behind the play. And what blows my mind about the Thunder specifically is pausing certain defensive possessions that they have and then trying to figure out how the players get in the position they get into 2 seconds later, where you're like, I don't understand it. All 5 players were in the paint 1.5 seconds ago. No one's open for 3. This doesn't make any sense. Speed, agility, all these kinds of things I think are really popping to me as like, is this where basketball is going basically?
It's unbelievable because, we talk about the physical aspects of it. It's like, oh, how important is it actually to be strong? But the defenses are so complex, Ben, and they change basically every possession that like, this is such a high level of thinking through the game at the same time as just being at the peak of your physical prowess. Like it's not just the steak and eggs, Ben. Like you're doing a Sudoku while eating your steak and eggs, or it's not just reading Infinite Jest. You're doing sets of squats and in between. You're like, here's my David Foster Wallace. I'm gonna get a workout both sides of this. There's no rest period out here, right? And you study a little bit more. I know you're big into like, you watch the game, you got your red pen, you're gonna figure out what's going on. Can you highlight anything specific that OKC is doing that you think is really limiting Jokic from maximizing what he does offensively, because I think you talked about it with Mike on the most recent pod when you were breaking down the games. Like, he's not leading the NBA in playoff BPM according to the thinkbasketball.net database. He's what? I think he's third right now. So I think
Yes, he's hanging in there. The first round series has helped him quite a bit, but this has easily been the hardest series of his career. There isn't even a close second, and we'll probably have more detailed video breakdowns of exactly what's happening. But the short of it, I think, is the Thunder's speed, the Thunder's ability to stay connected off ball, the ability to flood, like show him just a wave of defenders, but then accordion sort of back out into space without giving up much. And of course, their hands and their length and passing lanes. I mean, the man is sort of a turnover machine right now, which is a very weird thing to say about the legend Nikola Jokic. He might be the greatest offensive player ever. Like, when you look at the statistical profile, this is a guy who had, I think, in his entire postseason career coming into this series, 3 games with more than 5 turnovers. 3 games. And in this series, he's had 3 in a row with, I think, at least 6 turnovers. It's just absolutely nuts. In his entire career since the bubble, since he kind of actualized as Jokic, he's played 422 basketball games, Cody, since the bubble. That's how long ago the bubble was, which is
don't say that again. Let's
tribute.
expunge this one from the pod. I don't want to hear that again.
422 basketball games in this period. And in that entire period, he had 16 games with 6 turnovers or more and 6 assists or less. And he's done that 3 games in a row. Like, it's absolutely crazy what is going on. But I think it leads us to a larger question, which is about stars being defended and what we're seeing. Like, this year, it feels like you mentioned our box plus minus model for Patreon subscribers, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball that we host on our website, thinkingbasketball.net, right? You mentioned this. It feels like it's a battle of attrition where the first place person didn't play the night before because the prior first place person had to play a great defense, and then their box plus minus went down and down and down because there's only so much box models are going to be like, well, your defense, your defense, it's a defensive war. Your defense is great. So we're seeing star players getting chipped away at maybe more than I can ever remember in a single postseason. I don't know if you have strong impressions about this, but certainly in the Thunder series, the Nuggets are doing everything as a group to take Shea away from his sweet spots and prevent him from playing the way he likes to play. We obviously talked about Nikola Jokic. We saw the Houston Rockets create like this unbelievable zone to stop Steph Curry in their series. Tatum and Brown, but especially Tatum before his injury, struggled quite a bit with his shot. Brunson has been off and on. I think Brunson's interesting because some of his shot making and some of what he's able to do is just it is a counter skill to, you were talking about that probe dribble and things like that. If you have better balance, better strength, better ball handling, better vision, better shot making in a variety of ways, and I've talked about finishing, that's another one. Can you get into the paint and actually finish? I think that's what it takes to score at this level against these kinds of defenses, because we're getting in these playoff series right away and everyone's just throwing the kitchen sink at the head of the snake, and it's been really tough sledding for stars.
Well, what's interesting is, again, you look through the top guys in your box plus minus model, and in the top 7, here's some guys that are in the top 7 right now and what they scored. We have Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? 33 points plus almost 8 relative true shooting.
I think he's like the only one who's had a good go, right?
But then LeBron James, 25 points plus 5 efficiency. Then Kawhi Leonard, you have 26, almost 27 points per 75 plus 6 efficiency.
The common thread is these guys all played one series and got smoked.
This is my point, Ben.
Yeah,
I think that's what's really interesting is, of course, you have 3 guys that historically are some of the best scorers ever, but they didn't have to go through this gauntlet that is the insanity of this second round. So it almost like it makes them seem like they performed even better because they just didn't have to go against like what we're seeing night to night, right? And so I think this is one of those aspects where 20 years down the line, people will go back and rewatch this. Like, oh, Giannis was by far the best player in the playoffs. Sure. Like, he was playing pretty tremendously against the Pacers, but also like it loses the context of what's happening. And of course, we don't know what goes on in the third round or the fourth round, but the second round is just unbelievable in terms of it defensively. You talk about all of the driving, the tough finishes, the scoring in that way. You know who comes to mind when you say that, Ben? Even though his team is on the precipice of being eliminated now.
Donovan Mitchell?
Mr. Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
I mean, he's built like a dude that looks like he can finish through here. And I think more than that, again, we talk about the strength, the weight room and stuff like that. Just having the cardio to play in this kind of up-tempo game against the Pacers, to be able to stay lively and moving about defensively, but also to attack the basket like he does. Of course, this last game wasn't quite the tremendous output he put in the previous game, but it is an unbelievable effort to continue being able to do that. And I think you're right. I think that's probably the best way to just like self-generate an offense as a guard. Can I ask you a big historical question for a second?
I don't think it would be a Thinking Basketball podcast if you didn't ask me a big historical question. Yeah.
We got to sift through the history books, Ben. We got to get the textbook out. I'm thinking about the way that this Thunder team is built, the personnel that they have, the way that they run their defense. We see them really limiting Jokic in a way that we've never seen before. Do you think that there is, I guess I don't know if I want to ask you about a specific player or a player archetype. So I'll ask you both of them. Do you think there's any specific players that the Thunder wouldn't be able to limit to this degree? And or do you think that there's a specific archetype that maybe the Thunder isn't quite as equipped to slow down?
Boy, that's tough, because it's one of those things that even on our best day, even our best scout, you're still going to be wrong. 1 in 6, 1 in 5, 1 in 4 times, whatever it comes out to, even when you're at your very best. So what that means is, if we actually had tape of him playing a player like peak LeBron James or something, who wants to attack differently, who has size and strength and ball handling, because I think a key against this Thunder defense is probably being able to face up. And probably being able to face up and then potentially face up and also play with your back to the basket. So like second three-peat Michael Jordan, right? You could play face up off the dribble. You can attack facing the basket that way. But if you get a smaller, weaker defender on you, it goes back to our conversation with Pascal Siakam, then in an environment where scoring 107 points per 100 possession is all of a sudden great, right? You just have to kind of like shift your mathematical model in your head a little bit. You're like, actually, a 48% mid-range shot, if you're not going to come double, is awesome right now in our half-court offense, because our half-court offense, like Denver's offensive rating with Nikola Jokic since the Thunder made their defensive changes in game 1 is something like 95 when he's on the floor. 95. That's like 10, maybe even more, 15 points better than where he was against Minnesota last year. And that was good, because most of his series in his career are like 110 to 120 or something. We can pull it up. But the point is, it's a really hard thing to answer, because the way I think we get really solid information on these questions historically is to say, well, where's the evidence of what we saw them defend during the season? Like Anthony Edwards, you think like a shifty kind of face-up player who's really athletic, who can finish at the basket and hit pull-up jumpers. He did not have a fun time going against Oklahoma City this season, and we may get to see it again in the next round, and that will absolutely be a part of our sort of forecast and prognostication when we look at that series based on what happened. But to think of the very, very best, who it's so hard to approximate, peak LeBron James, 6'9", 250 pounds, very diverse post, mid-range. The three-point shot isn't what it is now, but he's going to try to carve you apart and look for a mismatch. Michael Jordan, I think it takes that kind of player. And even then, you're still probably not going to get great numbers, because Oklahoma City, when we did the Thinkies, Cody, I don't know if we said this at the end of the episode, but our defensive awards episode, the Thinkies, every single Thunder player in the top 7 in their rotation was in the Thinkies, except Isaiah Hartenstein. And Isaiah Hartenstein is a really good defender. So you have to get to like their 8th or 9th player in their rotation before you're talking about a defender that isn't like an all-league, literal, like all defensive team candidate based on how you slice the strength of the skill. Do you have thoughts? Because I just think it's very difficult.
Okay, so I think historically I'm going to go to that, then I'm going to talk about the Thunder defense again here. The thing that we can just talk about the Thunder, just have Thinkies 2.0, except we only just like vote on the Thunder players. Those are the only players that get voted on, right? Just run it back. The thing that like guys like Jordan and LeBron had that Jokic doesn't have is if Jokic beats you off the dribble, like if he's able to get you in the air, he maybe spins on you, gets downhill. He's not going to get to the basket the quickest. And these guys, the Thunder, are so fast. They are so fast at closing out. They're so quick at being long, getting their hands disrupting, blocking, and things like that. Guys like Jordan especially, like that first step of his was unbelievable, right? And the hang time that you can see him kind of hanging around, dodging some shots, absorbing contact, things like that. LeBron, just a freight train. He takes off from 18 feet away and he's throwing it down, and not 18 feet away. You know what I mean? 12 feet away, whatever it might be. He's not jumping 3 feet behind the free throw line. But that's my point. It's like I think the speed at being able to attack the rim after you break down that first line of defense is almost necessary to crack this Thunder shell.
Can I hijack the conversation in a slightly different direction?
Well, this is what I'd love. This is
okay. So this goes back to a theme in these playoffs about taking away stars and what's happening, and it goes back to the question you asked about, Ben, why are guys shortening their bench? I think we have seen more series in these NBA playoffs, early in the playoffs, that are approximate to the NBA finals than we've ever seen before. In other words, you get to the NBA finals and people were like, now we're going to go to our 6-man rotation. Now this guy is getting played off the court. Now we have to have this strategy. Every possession is super important. We're going to put this new thing in that we've never put in. Maybe we'll put it in the conference finals. And that's happening in the first round now. And I think it has to do with the technology that we have access to. You know, we know the release speed and the release angle of the shot as a man. You know, the fingertips are 4.8 inches away from a man, and he shoots 51.6%. I don't know why I'm saying a man. Just go with it. It's like we have all this technology. We have 2 or 3 rows of coaches behind the bench scouting out all these players. Everyone's getting smarter and smarter throughout the year. So teams can put in more stuff when they get to the postseason. They can say, hey, remember when we tried this against Memphis earlier in this year? We're going to take that concept. We're going to tweak it a little bit. The players are super smart and the rules are different. We don't have illegal defense anymore where you can manipulate the defense. And the thing about the illegal defense days from 1982 to 2002, when you could not zone in the NBA, you couldn't zone in the NBA forever, by the way, but 1982 to 2002, 2001 was the last year of the illegal defense rules. It really, the thing it did, Cody, besides manipulate spacing artificially, was it prevented these soft double teams. It prevented this idea of kind of sliding into the gaps and all the walls that we've talked about and all the themes that we talked about. You couldn't defend that way. So when it comes to a star, when it comes to how we historically contextualize Michael Jordan's best and worst series against these opponents, Kobe Bryant's best and worst series, LeBron James, oh, so-and-so never did this. So-and-so never had to play the 2025 Oklahoma City Thunder. So-and-so never had to play even a team like the Pacers, who were not really an inner circle defensive juggernaut. Very good defensive team when they have Andrew Nembhard and they're healthy. But you just look at the way they play and the personnel they have, and you go, nah, like they can't compete with peak Oklahoma City, Orlando's crazy, Houston, even Boston sometimes when they get going defensively. If Drew Holiday's, feeling good and his legs are spry and Al Horford had a good night's sleep, like it's amazing stuff. The Celtics, let's go back to this idea of like what you can put in now because of all these soft doubles. Derek White, Drew Holiday, Al Horford. They had 3 little king basketball geniuses on the court who are going to do just stuff where you have to rewind it 3 times and be like, did they just do a pre-switch from 30 feet? That's like a Draymond Green move. They got 3 of those guys. All this is to say, if we evaluate the stars in these series, I think it is a major mistake, a major folly to go, oh, these guys are having bad series. It's not the defense. And then historically, it's an even bigger mistake to go, oh, so-and-so didn't have this when they played in their day. And this guy struggled in this series now, therefore he's not as good.
There was a play specifically of course you have to bring up Drew Holiday, so I'm gonna jump on this conversation. I think it was game 2. There's a play, I think, in the fourth quarter where Bridges gets a screen. He's going downhill. Derek White gets caught on the screen, right? And Cornette is dropping against him, the middle of the floor. And Drew Holiday's he's on the opposite wing, right? He's on the weak side wing here. As soon as he sees that McHale or White got caught on the screen and Bridges getting downhill, immediately sprints over, even though Cornette is there, sprints over to take him so that Cornette can take the screener, and then Derek White runs over and covers the guy that Drew Holiday had. I've never seen that kind of a switch before. It was unbelievable. Live ball, like this is a drop, but also I'm going to switch from over here to take you. It was an unbelievable type of defensive rotation.
See, that defensive thing that you just described became very popular in Europe a couple of years ago. And so again, when you have the technology, when you have all these people sharing this information and the computers, and we can watch film from different, 50 different great professional leagues. And then you can take that idea and you can borrow it and you can sort of fit it into the NBA as needed. And so they don't use the exact same coverage concept. It never really became as popular in the NBA because the players are too good. They'll exploit it. But in an emergency situation, you can do stuff like that. And we're seeing these teams, even the Knicks last night, Cody, in their game against the Celtics, had some beautiful peel switches in emergency situations. And the Knicks have been playing, I mean, heck, Tibbs is ahead of the curve, right? Because the Knicks have been playing 6 players for about 2 straight years. That's all they want to do. They want to play 6 players and grind you into a pulp, and let's play some playoff basketball. What are you going to say? You have a thought?
Yeah, I'm just wondering now, in terms of team building, the personnel that you want to put around, do you think it's skewed back now, where you prefer your playoff rotation to be guys who are better and more buttoned up defensively and maybe a little bit more weak on offense than a bunch of guys that are better and buttoned up offensively and can be attacked a little bit more on defense?
Well, boy, in a way that kind of feels like an OKC question to me almost, right? Because we've talked for years, like when we do historical stuff, about these teams like Allen Iverson's 76ers, who are defensively oriented teams, and then needed this singular offensive force to kind of just tread water offensively for them, just carry the offense. And we often associate it with this kind of player. Derrick Rose did this in Chicago. There's a couple other examples where we say, this player, if he had to go play on a great offense, he's still a good player. But man, it introduces all kinds of weird questions. And Iverson did this in his career when he went to Denver. We talked about this in his Legends of Offense deep dive video that we did a number of years ago. It's like, you just know he's not going to average 35 points a game when other guys need to take shots. So then you say, well, how good is he off ball? How good is he as a screener and a cutter? What's his shooting like? What about his passing game? Can that fit really well next to other good offensive players? You don't have to address those problems. You eliminate those questions when you just say, go carry a good defensive team. But OKC, in a sense, feels like that on steroids, right? Where you're like, okay, they don't even really have a guy right now, depending on how J-Dub, Jalen Williams is going, that feels like a good kind of number 2, like Shea's on the bench. You can run offense through him. We're going to feel good about that. The defense is just so good that you just got to get enough points to win. So I don't know if that's what you're getting at, where you can have that model like the Cavs with Donovan Mitchell. If they could just get wings, big wings and forwards next to Evan Mobley and to some degree Jared Allen when they want to go Twin Towers, and just kind of be a little bit worse offensively, but play that style with great defenders. I don't know, to some degree the Celtics have done this as well, although the Celtics offense at times has been incredible. But at other times, it's, someone opened a window and the shot making got a little bit harder. So do you have more thoughts on that? Because I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but that's where my mind goes when you ask a question like that.
I think this goes back to your comment you made about like, hey, if you shoot 48% from mid-range, this is pretty good. Because you look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's shooting, he has a 57% true shooting percentage during the playoffs, or during the second round, I should say. During the second round is 57%.
It's that high?
Yeah. It's
Wow.
that high.
Jokic is 49 right now.
Here's my point. I think Jalen Brunson in the second round has like a 56% true shooting. If you're one of these guys that can self-generate in these playoffs, in this second round, and you're in like the mid-50s true shooting percentage, that's unbelievable. Like, you might look at that from like a bird's eye analytical view. You view the regular season, other postseasons, and you're like, oh, you don't want your self-creating guy to be shooting 55% true shooting. But right now, that's unreal. That's going to be like some of the best offense that you're going to be generating. So I think like the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, like you're talking about, this is basically like the Allen Iverson, like you said, up to 11, basically. Like we've basically never seen a construction quite like the way it's going right now. For them.
Is Mitchell in that same category where we have huge volume, but his true shooting is whatever it comes out to, 56 or 57%? And when we get the stats department on that, this goes back to all the things we've talked about. Pace has slowed way down because it has to slow way down when you switch hunt, when you stop running your quick hitting plays, when your bench is shorter. It has to slow down. And so the combination of pace slowing down in the playoffs and some of the things we've talked about defensively throughout this entire episode and throughout this entire postseason means that you can turn on a game, Cody, and the final score is 92-90. And if you didn't know any better, you go, oh man, I'm getting warm fuzzies in my stomach. It's 2003 again. I can't see too good. Did the 1999 Spurs just walk in the room? Is that Sean Elliott in the corner? Is it David? I'm sorry, is Will Perdue out there? David Robinson? What's going on? This is great. Jaren Jackson Sr., by the way, was on that 1999 team. Jaren Jackson Jr.'s dad. So you might think that if you look at these scores, right? But offensive efficiency in the playoffs is only slightly down compared to the regular season. That's not abnormal. If we're like 115 in the regular season, 114, we're 113 in the playoffs. In this second round, it's down even more. But again, it's like 111, I want to say, as of recording this in the second round. 111 points per 100 is the league-wide average in this second round. That is way better than where the league ever was at any point in time before about 2020. So that's something to keep in mind in terms of like, yeah, I know we're having these great games. I know we're having this great defense, but if I'm still at 111 points per 100, 110 points per 100, then yeah, I can't be at 44% on my mid-range shots because it might be the half-court offense might fall apart. But to your point, 48%, 50%, these are great shots. And sometimes you just got to find a way to score and get twos when you can't get better shots. And just mid-range twos could be those twos.
Well, having watched basketball for now a couple of decades, I would say, like, you go to the mid-2000s, I feel like it was a truism when you would watch playoff basketball. It's like, oh, first team to 100 is going to win this one. And, you know, it's basically...
That's Lawler's law, yeah.
If you get to that point, now you see games 117, 118. The games right now, you see a game that's like 109, 103. You're like, oh, this is a slow game, right? But, you know, 20 years ago, that would have been incredible. Donovan Mitchell, I pulled up his stats here. 56% true shooting in the second round. 34 points per game. I don't have the per 75, but 34 points per game. And if you compare that to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's doing a similar sort of thing, 27.5 points per game on, like I said, 57% true shooting. So very similar shooting there. What I find interesting between these guys is that they're both shooting in the low 20s in terms of three-point percentage. And I know Shai, there's a big thing about the improvement of his three-point shooting. He was never like truly like a standstill knockdown three-point shooter as much as Mitchell was. Like we talked about Mitchell as being one of the best shooters in the league, right? And that number has dropped significantly. So I think like if I had the time to really sit down and map out some kind of article right now, do a really deep study, I'd be really interested to see the second round three-point percentage and try and figure out what's going on there. Does it have to do with how tired these guys' legs are so they can't launch them up? Is there something defensively that's limiting or chasing guys off the three a little bit more? Because it feels like when I look at a bunch of these guys, especially at high volume, very few of them are shooting a very solid percentage from three. Jalen Brunson's different. I mean, that dude, he's like shooting 42% or something from three. Jalen Brunson's unbelievable. He's like the most Nick player like I can ever remember. He is so Mr. Nick. It's just so cool watching him go out there and do what he's doing.
Yeah, I don't think the overall three-point percentage is down too much. I mean, if you look at like removing heaves because it's a small sample, so you kind of want to do that. They're a little bit over 35% across the league in the second round. I don't think off the top of my head that is too different than the regular season. Yeah, the regular season was about 36%. So
what did you say for the playoffs?
35.2 in this round, 35.3 in this round, and it's 36%. So it's down a little. But then the thing you always want to do is you always want to make an apples to apples comparison. You'd have to say, like, who are the teams? Are there good shooting teams versus bad shooting teams? And then, of course, this gets back to the whole meta conversation we've been having. Who are the players? Who are the players you're letting take threes? So if we come back to this sort of mothership of examples about trends in this postseason, that Oklahoma City Denver series, they are like, we're going to ignore Russell Westbrook. That's rule number one. Okay. We can leave him, but we know and who we would prefer to take threes and from where. So we're not going to close out like maniacs to Christian Brown on the wing and leave Michael Porter Jr. open in the corner. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to make, if that's the lineup you want to put out there, we're going to make Christian Brown be the guy. I think Aaron Gordon had a little of that when the series started. And I think at this point, probably the entire Thunder staff and all their players are like, we're not letting Aaron Gordon shoot anymore. Aaron Gordon's the only guy out there that can make a three at times. He's been remarkable in his ability to improve his shooting. So this is another thing where defenses are getting smarter about the guys they're asking to take these volume shots. And we can come full circle all the way back to the Knicks and Celtics, because I've been fascinated for a long time. We've done entire episodes on quote unquote shooting luck, which is looking at the camera data and saying, how open, is the guy wide open? Is he open? What tends to happen on these shots? And then you play a 6 or 7 game series like the Celtics did against the Heat a few years ago. And all the Heat players shoot like, 4 to 6% better than what you'd expect. And all the Celtics players shoot like 4 to 6% worse than what you'd expect. And what does that come out to with the volume of threes? I can't remember, Cody, but I think in that episode, it was like a 13-point per game swing, right? Doesn't that sound right? That series was the biggest we've ever seen in terms of the quote unquote shooting luck from three in the era we've had this data since 2014. And like 13 points per game. That is better. That is the difference between like adding Michael Jordan to any team, Steph Curry, LeBron, it doesn't matter. They're not going to be as good as 13 points per game. Like, that is such an insane swing. So you look at these series, and it goes back to the Rockets missing 27 threes in a row in 2018. Like, in the playoffs, with this physicality, with this intensity, with these minutes, with this short, crazy rotations that these guys are playing, what becomes the actual like expected field goal percentage on these threes? Is it actually in a way easier for a player like Aaron Gordon to continue to hit his threes, or a guy who's just spotting up because it's more in line with his role? The stars are seeing things they've never seen before. Jamal Murray's, I think in many ways he's been great because the defense and the difficulty of the shots has been so high. You need some of his resilient shot making. I don't know the answer to this, Cody, but I'm fascinated by it now that we have teams being in positions where we're like, yeah, we'll take 45 or 53s a game if you're going to give it to us. And the Thunder are case in point as well, because the Thunder are a really good shooting team by the numbers. And in the regular season, they were a really good shooting team. And it is one thing for your team to go on they would have swept this series if they had their regular season shooting. Full stop. That's the difference that we're talking about right now. So it's one thing to go into a playoff game and shoot 28% instead of 38%. That's going to happen. But the Thunder at certain points were shooting like 9%. Where you're like, wait, you're like checking the box score. You're like, wait a second, I don't understand. They're 3 for 30 from downtown. 3 for 30. Is that just a total blip, or is there something more to it because of everything else going on?
Well, I mean, I think this is the impetus to me bringing up the whole, do you want a defensively slanted lineup? Because you look at Lou Dort, who's got a 43% true shooting during the series, right? He's shooting like in the 20%. Let me look it up quickly here. He's shooting 25% from three, and Lou Dort's not like a knockdown guy, but based on those numbers, like you look at the box score and you might be like, oh my God, how's Lou Dort getting minutes? Like, this guy's got to be played off the court. But his style of defense and his strength, his flexibility makes him invaluable there, right? Like, I don't think anyone's watching the Thunder saying, "Oh, we got to get Lou Dort off the court here. His guy's just useless."
Well,
right?
some of us were saying that.
Do you think that Lou Dort should be getting fewer minutes?
No, I'm saying the shot selection got a little bit wild. But that's another piece, right? You're looking at the numbers and you're going, man, Lou Dort is really underperforming his shooting numbers. But also, Lou Dort thought he was Steph Curry out there in one of the games. I think it was game 4 in Denver. He had like 10 threes in 18 minutes. And it was aggressive. He was just letting them fly the second he caught the ball. They were not necessarily great shots. Continue. Keep going.
Let me read you some numbers here for a second.
This is the best part of the show.
The player, if you look at just this series, the player for the Thunder that has taken the 3rd most threes in the series is Alex Caruso, who's taken 21 threes. The player that has taken the 2nd most threes for the Thunder this series is J-Dub, who has taken 24 threes. The player that has taken the most threes in this series for the Thunder is Lou Dort, who has taken 32 3-point attempts during the entire series, a full 8 more than the 2nd place Jalen Williams. So your point stands in terms of shot selection. By the way, numbers thing. I think it's Mark Jones commentating on the game for this. He brings up a lot. Anytime Westbrook shoots and misses a corner 3, he likes to say that Westbrook's a pretty solid 3-point shooter. Nothing against the guy, but I just want to correct this quickly. Westbrook did shoot like 40-something% from corner 3s this season. But if we widen that out a little bit, over his last 3 seasons, 216 game sample, he's shooting 34% on corner 3s. 34%. And I'm just going to guess, Ben. Most of those are pretty open. They are probably pretty open. So I do not think that Russell Westbrook has ever really been a good corner 3-point shooter.
No, that's correct. That is 34% from the 3 in the corner when you're wide open. It is definitely not good. To support us, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. That's the best way to do it. It's where we have our extra content this year, a ton of video content breaking down these playoffs. We get a little bit more hardcore with some of the things going on within the series. You can also just get that if you want just the videos on YouTube as a member, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. That's where we have all the stats board that is just, I've never seen one like this in the playoffs this year. You wake up every day and there's a new leader in the box plus minus model, and the numbers just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. By the end of the playoffs, the leader in box plus minus for anybody who's made it past the 2nd round is going to be like +2. It's going to be like a totally average player. Finals MVP will average 19 points a game. That's the trajectory we're on.
I want to ask you something. I want to see if you think this is going to matter at all. Because I was looking back at the distance between games last year, right? And it looks like, just like this year, the 2nd round and the conference finals last year in the playoffs, there's 1 game in between them. So about 48 hours between each game, right? But in the finals, there were 2 days in between. You played a game, 2 days off, finals game. I think 1 game maybe there was a 48-hour window, right?
Yep.
How do you think that's going to impact the final? Like, is that going to change things, that extra 24 hours when we get to that last round? Like, can you actually make lineups even tighter? Are we going to see older players maybe being a little bit more successful? Am I reading into something just a little too much? Ben, help me out here.
In terms of the schedule?
Yeah, like, doesn't matter that it's going to be 36 hours as opposed to 24 hours. 48 hours in the finals.
Wait, sorry, the finals is still going to be the finals is still going to be the same.
It's not. If you look at last year, they played a game, 2 days off, and then the next game.
I'm sorry, you're saying they're not doing that this year?
No, I'm assuming they're doing the same thing this year. So I was wondering if you think that the extra day of break compared to the 2nd round of the conference finals, if you think that's going to matter in terms of how tight a team can make their lineups or anything like that.
Oh, I don't know. I think I'm interested to see if the teams that don't have depth start to wear down. This is kind of another thing that's been rolling around in the back of my mind for these entire playoffs. Like, even this Denver OKC series, I'm waiting. Like, it's the back half of the series where the Nuggets players are playing crazy minutes that they're not used to playing. And the Thunder can go to, Case and Wallace, you get minutes. Aaron Wiggins, you get minutes. Jalen Williams, the J Will, not J Dub. It's just interesting watching some of the Thunder's best runs, and then you realize, like, oh, he hasn't brought J Dub or Shea or whatever back into the game in like 5 minutes. Indiana has that depth as well. I think teams that have that probably have a long-term advantage, because I'm not sure how long you can keep playing basketball at this level this intensity, this physicality, and this many games without much break. And if these series continue to go, maybe you have it maybe in front of you. I didn't quite follow what you were saying. I just sort of blacked out when you were talking. Like we are going to get almost every other day until the finals, right?
Yes, that's exactly.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
That's where I'm looking for the depth to take in.
And then you bring up Aaron Wiggins. I think he's the guy that just is the like pinnacle of what you're talking about right now. He's averaging like 15 minutes per game in this series. And every time I watch him play, I'm like, this is a guy that's buried on the bench. Like Aaron Wiggins isn't getting minutes right now. Like he's doing some pretty tremendous stuff. So I wonder if they need to start flexing some depth, like, hey, Aaron Wiggins, you're playing 28 minutes tonight. And I think he's going to do a great job, right? Everything that I've seen of him, it's going to be like, okay, he's going to go out there and be successful offensively and defensively and stuff like that. The OKC team is just too many riches, Ben. It's unbelievable what they've got out there.
Can I just mention this play? They had so many plays in game 4 that literally would have been the best play of any other team defensively. They would have like put it in the video room when they come in the morning. They were like, this was our crowning moment, this defensive play. Thunder had a ton of them. One of them that blew my mind that ties into the conversation we had today is Jokic catches it in the post. He's putting his defender into the meat grinder in the post like he likes to do. Jalen Williams, J-Dub, is shadowing, like coming from the top like he's going to double. He's like creeping closer, maybe playing a little mind game with him, like feigning toward him, like I might double, I might not double. I know you want to kick it back out to the shooter. You remember, I'm gonna steal the pass when you kick it back out to the shooter, right? This is the crazy part, Cody. As he leaves to recover to his shooter for the final time, he's doing the dance, but then he legit recovers to the shooter. Alex Caruso hard doubles from the opposite spot. So Alex Caruso is sitting on the opposite block behind two players, like lurking like a lion in the bushes. Okay. And when Jalen Williams leaves, Caruso hard doubles, and Jokic has this moment, which I understand, which must have been like, finally single coverage. Jalen Williams is not double. He's like, put it in the mental bank, right? Jalen Williams is not doubling. The second he does that, the lion Caruso comes charging toward him. Jokic goes, oh my God. He picks up the ball. He spins away from Jokic, from Caruso, because Caruso's dangerous and might steal it. Turns to go to like maybe think about throwing a pass. The only guy remotely open is Russell Westbrook in the opposite corner. And you got to throw that thing into Case and Wallace territory. And last time Jokic threw it into Case and Wallace territory, it was a pick six. It did not end well. So what the poor Serbian man had to do was shoot the ball fading away over two defenders from the baseline, and he threw up a brick. That's what we're dealing with in these playoffs. And I just don't think it's just hard to think about players who have had to deal with that kind of stuff in the past. That is insane basketball, Cody.
I mean, the amount of processing you have to do in just that moment. We talk about Jokic and his ability to process in an instant. Like he turns and somehow he's seen it behind his head. Has he had has he had a single assist that you would put up into his regular season assist highlights this year?
He had one. It was on a broken play. It was on a broken play, an offensive rebound. He caught it in the paint and kind of looked up at the hoop like he was going to shoot and went behind his back to Aaron Gordon, who got a dunk. That's one of the only ones in the entire series. Yeah. The dude only has like 12 assists.
Unbelievable. That game's tonight, isn't it?
He has more turnovers than assists in this series.
Thunder team. It's a cheat code.
Yeah.
It's a cheat code.
Do you have other thoughts that are not Thunder related? Have we covered our bases? No, I think before we end recording today, I think you wanted to talk about how the Celtics were not dead, to match what I was saying at the beginning about the Cavs not being dead. Do you want to say that on record? I'm
going to preface this. This is the same thing. Remember when you're like, remember when you say private things that you bring it out of the past?
Yes. You knew it was coming.
I just want all of New York to come at me, I guess. Listen, I'm going to say this by saying that the way the Knicks are playing right now, the way that OG and Mikal Bridges are working defensively and being able to hit their shots and stuff, this is the actualized Knicks. This is what I envisioned at the beginning of the season before all of a sudden their offense was really good and their defense wasn't very good, right? And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm not saying I thought the Knicks would be this good, right? But I thought the Knicks would be a little bit more potent defensively than they had been in the regular season. So this is me saying I'm starting to believe a little bit more in the Knicks from what I've seen. Oh, wow. Big man over here saying he believes in a team that's up 3-1. Good for you. But I'm just interested. I wonder if like Tatum being out, if the Celtics just have to be like, hey, we can't do the mismatch hunting thing anymore.
Yes. This is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, yes. we gotta bring out the Popovich 2014. We just gotta move the ball. Drew Holiday, Derek White, you're in the dunker spot. We're spraying it out. Al Horford, elbow action. We're bringing out with delay. No running delay anymore, but we're gonna run delay. Kristaps Porzingis is all of a sudden feeling better, and he's spraying out from 30 feet. I don't know, man. I'm just saying that I'm not closing the casket yet on this series.
Let's get some Luke Cornett minutes in there. Let's get Al Horford at the elbow, running handoff backdoor routes with Jaylen Brown. Let's make it happen. Derek White. Let's make it happen.
I have here's a thought I'm going to end with, because I thought of it in the third quarter in the middle of the Brunson burner moment when he's just going crazy. At one point, he grabs an offensive rebound. Like everyone's just kind of all over chaotically. And he just kind of like ducks in for a couple of dribbles and he makes a layup. And I was just like, this man is just the most Knicks player I've ever seen. And then I started thinking, if you were to make a list of like the most Knicks players ever, right? Obviously like Walt Clyde Frazier is right there. Bernard King is obviously right there. I'm not going to try and rank these guys, but Brunson is like one of the Knicks like ever, right? He's one of the Knicks
What does it mean to be a very Knicks player?
I think there's got to be an aspect of toughness. There's an aspect of like, I don't know, is there an underdog thing? I'm not sure. I'm speaking of a city that I've just never visited and I don't know anything about, but it feels like Brunson is a very Knicks player.
Yes, the Knicks have this. It's kind of like a bizarro thing where the Knicks have this despite being in New York, because you know they haven't won a championship since 1973 and they've made the finals once, 26 years halfway in the middle, 1999. It's been pretty long time. Yeah,
I would say that Brunson is maybe the most Knicks player since the 70s.
Willis Reed is another one. The members of the audience are shouting out Willis Reed. Just some housekeeping before we get out of here. I know we're running long today, but who knows what's going to happen this week and when we're going to be able to talk about this. Just some housekeeping. Steph Curry is officially out for Game 5 against Minnesota. That will just be so sad and depressing for me as a basketball fan to just have that series never really be a series and just never really get off the ground. And, you know, if Minnesota closes it out, we will move on to Minnesota, and that's going to be a fun conference finals with them. But that series has kind of been on the back burner because of that unfortunate situation. And then the other bit of housekeeping, I think, is because who knows when we're going to talk about this, OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges have in many, like, say what we want about Brunson and all the other stuff we've talked about. Karl Anthony Towns has had some nice moments. We've talked about the Knicks being willing to switch a little bit, the physicality, but those two wings to me have been the difference. And it just gets back to the idea of like playoff players. Someone I think in the audience was asking earlier about who are like some sneaky, very good 16-game playoff players that you wouldn't necessarily think about in the regular season. I mean, Al Horford at his age is one, because like when push comes to shove for a 12-minute stretch, I don't know how many guys are better still than Al Horford when he's had a good night's sleep. But both those wings in New York, Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, two-way performances in just a way that summarizes everything we talked about in this episode today and summarizes the greatness of these playoffs. Good defense, super physical when needed, super versatile and switchable, playing massive minutes, and on offense, they have both made hard shots and done the things that other guys just can't do with their size, or in OG's case, his physicality, rebounds, get near the basket, finish, contested jumpers in the mid-range, and it's just been awesome to watch. And I just had to get that on the record before we get swamped by 800,000 new waves of basketball incredibleness in the next week.
And I feel like Bridges more than OG on this one. Not saying that he's outplaying OG, but the thing with Bridges is he makes his offensive money with that kind of like tough little turnaround, maybe pull up mid-range jumper, right? I think that's where he really makes his bones offensively. The first couple games of the series, it was pretty rocky. Like Bridges wasn't there offensively, but the last 2 games, Ben, like tough shot after fourth quarter streak, after wide open 3. And I think that particular punch, along with OG, like you said, just being huge and physical. I mean, we talk about strength. Like, I don't know how many guys in the playoffs right now you can list over OG in terms of just like raw strength in how you can play defense on the perimeter. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Hats off to these 2 guys, how they've been defending the Celtics and how they've really called up next to Karl Anthony Townsend and Jalen Brunson as offensive weapons.
If you missed it, Saturday we broke down a bunch of the series. Last Tuesday was our normal episode. Cody will be back next Tuesday. We may again have to sneak in a kind of emergency if stuff happens, an emergency podcast recording later in the week, and keep the good times flowing. Until then, thanks as always for listening to this one, and of course we hope you are having a great